are still your number one best team in women's professional basketball out in the Western Conference at 19-9. As far as their Western Conference competition goes, the next closest would be the Phoenix Mercury at 16-11, followed by the Tulsa Shock at 13-14, and the Los Angeles Sparks at 10-17 will likely be one of the worst playoff teams ever, unless they only have 4 or 6 playoff teams, but I would think they'd have 8. But I don't know. Who knows? Oh yeah, and then out east you've got just about every team's really good, and fortunately 2 of these teams aren't going to make the playoffs for sure. But we got the New York Liberty at 18-8, second best team in women's basketball. The Indiana Fever not too far behind them at 17-9. Then you got a tiny bit of a drop-off going to Chicago. The Sky are 17-11, followed by the Washington Mystics, who are 15-11. And then you got the Connecticut Sun and Atlanta Dream, both under 500 out in the East. And the Minnesota Lynx and the Phoenix Mercury out west have both already clinched playoff berths. And they have approximately 2 weeks left, just maybe a little over 2 weeks left in their season, as their regular season ends on Sunday, September 13th. So if you got a horse in that race, time to start paying attention and check out your favorite professional women's basketball team. Now, me again being from Minnesota, I should know more about our women's pro basketball team than I do. And, I know Maya Moore and, I know a bunch of the players and stuff, but I guess more the league in general. So there you go. I'm making a Wednesday night resolution to enlighten myself more on the ways of the WNBA sometime in the future. All right, so there's another quickie for you. Let's see. Do we have any more quickies? Yeah, you know what? Well, we're going to turn baseball into semi-quickie as well, and then we will get into our football meat for the show here this evening. All right, so Major League Baseball right now, boy, it's a good time again to be a Twins fan. It goes up and down, but so far for the most part this year it's been way more up than it's been down. We were on and playing not very well since the All-Star break, and we're falling out of wild card contention, which we were once sitting, in one of the 2 wild card spots. That wasn't the case. But now, after a 5-game win streak where we swept Baltimore 4-0 out in Baltimore, then had a day off on Monday where we hung out in Florida, and then yesterday we started our series with the Tampa Rays, and we won the first game of that series. And like I said, that puts us on a current 5-game winning streak. Now, this series against the Tampa Rays is only a 3-game series, so they've got the game tonight, and then the game tomorrow night, same time, and then they return home on Friday to take on the Houston Astros for 2 games. And then they have rare Sunday and Monday off. No, that ain't right. No. Excuse me, scratch that. Houston on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's another 3-game series. And then Monday, they have off. But then the whole month of September, a lot of home games and pretty much all division foes. So while we're not competing with a lot of division foes, all the people in our division, other than the Kansas City Royals, should be very winnable series, which you got to win to stay in the playoff hunt. So hopefully the Twins will keep things going and stay in that wild card race. Currently, for the second and final wild card spot in the American League, there are 5 teams, all within, I want to say, 2.5 games of that final spot, the Twins being one of those teams. And it is, as a Twins fan, being on the outside looking in, it's hard to ignore the correlation between Buxton coming back and getting called up again and the win streak. That's not to say that, it was his fault or anyone else's fault that was there instead or anything like that, but just when this guy comes up and plays for the Twins, we play better ball as a team. We just seem more inspired, more energetic, more driven to succeed, more passionate. So keep him up here, like lock him in. Whenever that guy's healthy, he needs to be a big time player. And Sano over at third. I mean, boy, if he would have gotten called up sooner, he would have maybe had a chance at Rookie of the Year. He still might flirt with the American League Rookie of the Year by the time it's all said and done. We still got a whole month, 5-6 weeks left in the season to go. But so the future is very, very bright for the Twins, Buxton and Sano especially. And then you throw in your Dozier and your Hicks and your Rosario, and you got a pretty good foundation for your everyday lineup there. You got to like the acquisition of Jepson as well in the bullpen, especially filling in at closer here as of late for the injured as well as super struggling Glenn Perkins. So that trade, as we pointed out at the trade deadline, proved to be a good move for the Twins. But it would be most beneficial if Perkins could get back to health and productivity before the games are irrelevant and we're not playing for a playoff spot. But all in all, things are looking pretty good for the Twins. Whether they make the postseason or not this year, they have overachieved, and that needs to be remembered if you're a Twins fan. This wasn't going to be the year no matter what. Can't say it enough. This was never our year. Next year or the year after that might be, if we continue to do the right things. So, we went over we just went over a little bit of the wild card picture. Let's go over the playoff picture real quick for baseball, and then we'll be done with our quickies and get to the meat of the show. So we've got the still red hot post-trade deadline Toronto Blue Jays in first place in the AL East at 70-55. They are a game and a half ahead of the New York Yankees. And then you've also got the Baltimore Orioles and the Tampa Rays at 62-63, both in the wild card picture. Now, they're 8 games out of first, and the Yankees are only a game and a half out of first. So that tells you right there that second place in the AL East is getting the number 1 wild card spot most likely, whereas up until this point in the year it had looked like number 2 in the West was a lock for that spot. However, that is no longer the case, as the Angels are on a major schneid. The Rangers have actually passed them out west. You got the Astros at 71-57 on top of their division. Then you got the Rangers at 64-60 and the Angels at 64-61. Angels were 3 to 5 games in first place in that division not too long ago. And then, of course, in the Central, you got your Royals on the top, and then you've got your Twins at 64-61. So, for that second wild card, we've got the Yankees in the first wild card spot. For that second wild card spot, we've got the Minnesota Twins and the Texas Rangers. I want to say the Twins are a half a game behind the Texas Rangers. Yes, the Angels and the Twins are both a half a game behind the Texas Rangers for the second and final wild card spot. We pointed out at the trade deadline how the Texas Rangers were a mover. Looking at their record, it was slightly surprising, but mathematically they were still in wild card contention, and the division they were in has been extremely inconsistent and up and down this year at the top of it. So lo and behold, they made moves and they're working out, and now they are sitting in the number 2 wild card spot should the playoffs start today. However, they don't. That is good news for the Twins, for the Angels, and then you've got the Orioles and Rays hanging in there. But if right now we were to narrow it down to a 3-team race for the second and final wildcard spot, which it really is at the moment, and they're all neck and neck, they're all within a half a game of each other, it's the Rangers, Angels, and your and my Minnesota Twins. So you never know. Very possible that the Twins might still make the playoffs this year. And if that's the case, that'll just be tons of fun for our fan base. And as long as everybody just enjoys it and has no expectations or of World Series delusion, it'll be great. We'll be fine. So then out west, out in the National League, my bad. We've got your best team in baseball all year there, the St. Louis Cardinals at 80-45. They've almost lapped themselves If they win the next 10 games in a row, they'll be 90-45. That's like lapping yourself. You know what I mean? Pirates, only 4.5 games behind them at 75-49, and the Cubs 6.5 games back at 73-51. So the Cubs at 73-51. If they were in the American League, the only division they wouldn't win is the Central. National League, the only division they wouldn't win is the Central. So you got to feel bad for the Pirates and the Cubs this year, just victims of circumstance. Both teams are going to make the playoffs more than likely. However, highly likely that both teams are going to make the playoffs as the wild cards. However, it is a shame that it is a one-game, basically play-in playoff, and that one of these teams won't get to play an actual full series. But then out west, we've got the Dodgers currently 2.5 games up on the Giants. And then out in the east, you've got the Mets 5.5 games up on the Nationals. So there is your baseball standings and quickie. And that is it for quickies for tonight. So, rest of the show we got yet is we got a big, satisfying serving of meat. And then we've got some balls juice, because we try to, give you as much balls juice after we give you the meat as possible. And then we will finish with our Balls Deep thought of the day as always. All right. Thanks again for listening. I'm Scotty Ball, and you're listening to Balls Deep Sports Talk here on WNLMradio.com. All right. So on the meat of tonight's show, we are talking all things football. Now, this last week, my Minnesota Vikings beat the Oakland Raiders to move to 3-0 on the preseason this year. We have 5 preseason games this year as opposed to the normal 4 because of our involvement in the Hall of Fame preseason game. Now, the next preseason game for your Minnesota Vikings is this Saturday, August 29th at Jerry World in Dallas, Texas versus them Cowboys. This will be the final tune-up of the preseason for all of your key player starters, most of your first-team guys, things of that nature. So expect to see names like Teddy Bridgewater and Mike Wallace out there for the entire first half. I would think likely is you're going to see all the big names, all the starters play at least a half, the first half, and then maybe a little bit into the third. Like I said, this is their final tune-up for those guys for the most part. So that's going to be a primary focus. Then next week, in the final preseason game, which will be on Thursday, September 3rd at the Tennessee Titans, that game you won't see very many starters at all. You'll see almost all second and third and fourth teamers trying to figure out, who rounds out certain positions for depth and who gets cut. So that's what to look for here coming up from the Vikings. It is my sincerest hope that we go into Dallas and beat the Cowboys. I would actually think that we would. They tend to not take preseason very seriously, and they've got some issues. Primarily injury-wise, they just lost Orlando Scandrick, one of their best secondary players today, out for the season. Jordy Nelson of the Packers, out for the season. Kelvin Benjamin, wide receiver for the Panthers, out for the season. We've been getting quite a few big-name injuries here, or at least significant injuries to their team. And so far, if you're a Vikings fan, for the most part, the Vikings are staying fairly healthy, obviously excluding the Phil Lodeholt injury, which, as I explained last week, I'm not even that worried about. I think we'll actually be better off at the end of the season when it's all said and done. But that's just my opinion. Now, as a Vikings fan, I would like to personally congratulate and give mad props to head coach Mike Zimmer, who through his first 7 preseason games as an NFL head coach, has proven to be the best preseason NFL head coach of all time. Mike Zimmer is unbeatable in the preseason. He's never lost. He's a perfect 7-0. So he could finish this preseason with a career preseason winning record of 9-0. Is there, that's almost that's almost as impressive as Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak. In all honesty, I mean that's just amazing. Uh,